It's The Real News. I'm Aaron Mate. Twitter, Facebook, and Google were brought before Congress last week for 2 days of hearings on Russia's alleged meddling in the 2016 election. Lawmakers accused the tech giant of failing to stop a Kremlin plot to elect Donald Trump and sow domestic chaos through social media and the marginal outlets RT and Sputnik. But as this clip put together by RT shows, things did not go so well.
I went home last night with profound disappointment.
All of what the Russians did last year has basically been a free pass.
In the past election, you failed.
Lack of resources, a lack of commitment, and a lack of genuine effort.
And that just won't do.
The key, I'd say, progress we've made is...
That's a yes or no once again. Mr. Edgett.
We think that the key to this area is transparency.
As you might guess, I'm really not satisfied with that.
We have services that verify identities on the platform.
So why on earth not?
Well, the answer is yes or no. I don't want a long explanation.
Senator, those... Let me try to
Yes
state it
or no?
absolutely.
I would like in writing within a week what you're doing about it.
We are constantly doing better.
I'm joined now by Yascha Levine, investigative journalist and author of the forthcoming book, Surveillance Valley, The Secret Military History of the Internet. Welcome, Yascha. It's great to have you on. Now, you are uniquely positioned to discuss this issue because you're not just a reporter who covers Silicon Valley, but you're also Russian-born. So I guess to start off, I want to ask you if you could summarize what you thought was the most important or salient parts of these 2 days of hearings last week on Russia's social media presence in the 2016 election.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Glad to be here. Yeah, well, I mean, it was a ridiculous spectacle. You know, I'd say it's evoked kind of, for me, a Soviet show trial, really, because there you saw politicians in both parties, Republicans and the Democrats, basically creating a fake enemy, whipping up fears of this sort of scary other to cover for their own political failings, and sort of dragging these representatives of these biggest technology companies in America and basically extracting confessions out of them and extracting mea culpas out of them and saying that yes, they let this enemy in and that they'll promise to do better next time. And you know, it really is. It was a show trial, pure and simple.
So, Yascha, you know, to illustrate what you say there about creating an enemy, I want to go to a clip that I think illustrates that point very clearly. This is a Democratic Senator, Ron Wyden of Oregon, and he's making some opening statements, and this is what he says about Russia.
With the current fascist leadership of Russia enthusiastically undermining our democracy, America must defend the values that made us great and aggressively confront this espionage and the enemies that sponsor it.
So that's Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, known for having progressive views on certain issues, calling the Russian government fascist and accusing it of espionage through its alleged social media campaign during the 2016 election. So Yascha, let's talk about the espionage part of this, as Wyden describes it. These apparent ads from Russian troll farms, by all accounts, that were meant to, in the framing of this narrative, to sow chaos in the U.S. Can you talk about what those ads actually contained and what you think they actually were, like what their goals were?
That's a good question. You know, I still think that, you know, for the most part, it's not clear, you know, who was paying for those ads, because the information that we're getting from Facebook and from Twitter, you know, that these accounts are sort of, these ads were bought by, you know, Russian-linked accounts, right? Russia-linked accounts are a very hazy and sort of unclear category. According to Twitter's own testimony, Russia-linked could mean any account that had logged in from a Russian IP address. It could mean any account that had used Cyrillic in its a Twitter handle or tweeted in Russian. It could be any account that that is in any way, however tangentially tied to the Russian territory. So it doesn't have to be tied to the Russian government. It can pretty much belong to maybe a tourist who passed through Russia at some point and logged in from their hotel.
That's right, Yasha. Just to say, and
Yeah.
just to be clear, this is not if it meets all of these criteria. It's simply Twitter's criteria, as it explained in the hearing, is if it meets any of these criteria.
Yes.
So if someone logs in from a Russian IP address, that's enough for Twitter to say, this is Russian linked.
Yeah, totally. It could be any one of those. And so I would be considered a Russian linked account because I had reported from Russia, obviously, and I spent about 8 months in Russia last winter, logging into Twitter every day from a Russian IP address and tweeting about Russian events and tweeting about events from a kind of a perspective that was critical of American foreign policy. I mean, so it's hard for me to explain, and to talk about what these ads were and what their role was and what the thinking was of the people who paid for them, right? Because these companies aren't providing any real information, right? They're throwing them out there and they're saying that, look, these are examples of some kind of Russian, actors, as they like to call them, doing something to divide America. So there's ads of Bernie Sanders, there's ads for the Black Lives Matter movement. But I don't actually know.
Yeah, sorry. I want to show one of those ads of Bernie Sanders.
Sure.
He has his shirt. He's as a superhero. He has his shirt off, and it's by a group called LGBT United. It says you can color your own Bernie hero. So this is one of the ads. It's Bernie as this cartoonish superhero with his shirt off, and that is we're told is what is supposed to be this Russian effort to hurt Hillary, elect Trump, and sow chaos in the U.S. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It's a joke, and again, it reminds me of a show trial because this evidence is being being offered at these congressional hearings, right? At these congressional investigations, as proof of something really nefarious going on, as proof that Russia had somehow weaponized these really democratic, almost utopian platforms and weaponized them against, America and subverted America's democracy. These things are shown as evidence of that, and it's a farce. I mean, you can't believe it unless you already are so willing to believe the narrative that it was Russia that undermined America, that it was Russia that made Trump possible, that it was Russia that helped lead to Hillary's defeat, that it was Russia that's behind the anti-fracking movement, that it's Russia behind protests against Wall Street and inequality, that it was Russia behind Black Lives Matter. If you're willing to believe all that, these ads will help to will offer more proof that Russia is really behind everything that's wrong with America and everything that's bad that's happening in America. But to everyone else who looks at this critically, I mean, it's hard to take it seriously.
So let me ask you, given that there's a close history between Silicon Valley and the government, and given that we also know that when Facebook initially did their first review of alleged Russian meddling, they found that actually most of the ads that they identified were for commercial purposes. This is from a really big Washington Post account of the Facebook angle of the Russiagate story. But they only changed their mind after they received congressional pressure. So I'm wondering if you think, what sort of leverage does Congress have over Silicon Valley to get them to sort of perhaps play ball, to join them in the Russiagate frenzy in order to advance their narrative?
Yeah, I mean, I think the leverage is actually pretty simple here and pretty clear. There have been multiple stories actually written about this in Bloomberg and in the Huffington Post. It's basically regulation. So a few weeks ago in the Senate, there was bipartisan legislation proposed. It was sponsored in part by Senator McCain, and that would regulate and internet advertising, right, and force companies like Google, Facebook, and Twitter to disclose, who is buying, who's paying for the ads. And so the stick that Congress is wielding is regulation, and Silicon Valley is deadly scared of being regulated and being forced to open up their really opaque advertising business. And so they're complying completely with these investigations, and they're telling these Congress exactly what it wants to hear. And it was incredible to watch, actually. On October 31st, the Senate hearing, there was you basically had lawyers of 3 of the biggest technology companies in America going down the line, right, and pledging their allegiance, right, to America and to protecting America, and to doing everything they could to prevent sort of foreign meddling and foreign influence in American society. And this is coming from companies, right, that have for years have told the world, have told countries like Russia, Iran, Venezuela, China, that their platforms are totally politically neutral and that they're in no way connected to the U.S. government or to the goals of sort of the bigger sort of national security state and America's foreign policy apparatus. So what Silicon Valley has done here is completely sort of ditched that idea, this idea that they've been pushing for as long as I can remember, right? And I think they're doing it. It's kind of incredible to see, and they're doing it to prevent having to open up and to be honest about their business practices, because I think there's a lot of stuff that they don't want, that they're afraid will get out about the way that they make money.
We'll leave it there. Yascha Levine, investigative journalist and author of the forthcoming book, Surveillance Valley, The Secret Military History of the Internet. Yascha, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. I'm young.
And thank you for joining us on The Real News.